The surveillance bill returns. The bases go underground. The university's fascist past resurfaces. The politician claims victimhood while backing genocide. A superhero film flops harder than Morbius. A Linux distribution shifts. A theme generator updates. A gaming accessory vanishes. These 8 posts from the Fediverse appear disconnected. They are not. They map the coordinates of power in late-stage capitalism, the instruments of control, the infrastructure of empire, the ideology that legitimizes both, the culture industry that distracts from both, the technical alternatives that threaten both, and the repression that silences dissent against both. Start with Chat Control 1.0. The European Commission's proposal to mandate client-side scanning of all private communications, effectively ending encryption, was declared dead in 2023 after massive public opposition. Now it returns, rebranded, attached to a regulation on preventing child sexual abuse material. The mechanism is always the same. Attach universal surveillance to a crime no one dares oppose. Then expand the definition of the crime until the surveillance covers everything. The EU's own legal service warned it violates fundamental rights. The Commission proceeds anyway. This is not legislative error. This is the state claiming the right to read every word its citizens write to each other. The justification is protean. Terrorism yesterday, CSEM today, disinformation tomorrow, political dissent the day after. The infrastructure, once built, does not care about the justification. It only functions. Move to the U.S. moving bases underground. The admission comes from the Army Corps of Engineers. New command centers, logistics hubs, and communications nodes are being built subterranean. The stated reason, survivability against hypersonic missiles and nuclear strikes. The material reason, the U.S. empire prepares for the wars its declining hegemony makes inevitable. Underground bases are not defensive. They are the infrastructure of first strike capability and continuity of government, the ability to wage nuclear war and keep the command structure intact while the population burns. This is the physical manifestation of the same logic that produces chat control. The ruling class secures its own survival and control at the expense of the governed. The surveillance state watches the interior. The hardened bunker protects the exterior. Both serve the same masters, Harvard and the Third Reich. The documentation is extensive. Harvard's President Abbott Lawrence Lowell enforced Jewish quotas. The university sent delegates to Nazi-controlled universities. It hosted Nazi officials. It maintained academic partnerships after Kristallnacht. The law school accepted a donation from a Nazi industrialist in 1934. The Crimson ran Hitler's speeches. This is not historical trivia. It reveals the class character of elite institutions. Harvard did not fail to see fascism. It saw a fellow traveler in the suppression of labor, the discipline of populations, the defense of property against revolution. The same universities that incubated eugenics, that trained the architects of structural adjustment, that today host CIA recruiters and weapons research, they do not deviate from their function. They reproduce the ideology and personnel of ruling class power. The fascist past is not an aberration. It is the revealed preference. Scott Wiener, California state senator, confronted at a town hall over his support for Israel's genocide in Gaza. His response, claim the protesters are anti-Semitic, invoke the ADL playbook, perform victimhood. This is the standard operating procedure of the Zionist lobby and its political servants. Equate opposition to genocide with hatred of Jews. Weaponize the memory of the Holocaust to silence dissent against the current Holocaust. The ADL, founded to defend a lynched Jewish factory manager, now spends its budget attacking Jewish Voice for Peace, Students for Justice in Palestine. Any Jew who refuses the bargain, your safety for Palestinian erasure. Wiener is not an outlier. He is the mechanism. The Democratic Party, which could not codify Roe, cannot stop arms shipments, cannot pass healthcare, moves with bipartisan unity on this. $26 billion more for the slaughter, the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act to criminalize criticism of Israel, the campus crackdowns, the police violence. The repression is not coming. It is here. Supergirl 2026 opens below Morbius. The culture industry, tasked with manufacturing consent and distracting the masses, cannot even manufacture a competent product anymore. The MCU and DCU are collapsing under the weight of their own formula. Endless interconnected content, focus group to death, stripped of vision, existing only to extract subscription revenue and toy sales. The flop is not an accident. It is the crisis of cultural production under monopoly capital. When Disney owns the distribution, the theaters, the IP, the merchandising, the streaming platform, it does not need to make good films. It only needs to make content. But content requires an audience, and the audience is broke, exhausted, and increasingly aware that the stories they are sold, heroes saving the world through individual virtue and violence, are the ideology of their oppressors. The superhero genre is the fantasy of the ruling class. The billionaire, Batman, Iron Man, or the genetically superior, Superman, Captain America, imposes order on the chaotic masses. The genre's exhaustion mirrors the system's exhaustion. Maggie IA-10 releases. A community-driven Linux distribution, forked from Mandriva, carrying the legacy of Mandrake. No corporate owner. No telemetry. No forced updates. No AI integration scraping user data. It works because the people who build it use it. This is the kernel of an alternative. Technology developed for use value, not exchange value. The same logic appears in the LCARS theme generator, a Star Trek interface built by a fan for fans, released free, modifiable, extensible. These are not hobbies. They are proof that the profit motive is not necessary for complex technical production. They are the embryonic form of post-capitalist production. Commons-based peer production, stigmergic coordination, needs-based allocation. The state and capital know this. That is why chat control targets encryption. That is why the EU pushes digital sovereignty. That means corporate sovereignty. That is why the US sanctions open-source developers who contribute to sanctioned countries' repositories. The alternative is not theoretical. It is compiling. The brand Portal case vanishes. A limited edition Steam Deck accessory, themed after Valve's Portal, pulled without explanation. The corporation giveth, the corporation taketh away. The product existed only as a marketing event, artificial scarcity, hype cycle, FOMO. When the campaign ends, the product disappears. This is the logic of the culture industry applied to hardware. Nothing is made to last. Nothing is made to be repaired. Everything is made to be consumed and discarded. The Steam Deck itself is a rare exception, a Linux handheld from a corporation that profits from a 30% cut of game sales, so its incentive aligns with user freedom. But the accessories? Pure extraction. The vanishing case is a metaphor. Under capitalism, the things you buy are not yours. They are licensed, revocable, designed for obsolescence. Connect the threads. Chat Control builds the surveillance infrastructure. Underground bases build the war-fighting infrastructure. Harvard builds the ideological infrastructure. Wiener and the ADL build the repression infrastructure. The superhero flop reveals the crumbling distraction infrastructure. Maggie IA and LCARS build the liberation infrastructure. The Brand case reveals the extraction infrastructure. Power is not a conspiracy. It is a structure. The state, capital, the university, the media, the lobby group, the technical standard. Each reproduces the others. The surveillance law protects the military-industrial complex from domestic dissent. The military protects the capital that funds the university. The university produces the ideology that legitimizes the lobby group. The lobby group buys the politicians who pass the surveillance law. The media distracts the population while the infrastructure hardens. The technical alternatives threaten the whole edifice, so they are targeted, co-opted, or suppressed. Counter-arguments. Chat Control protects children. The EU's own impact assessment admits client-side scanning produces massive false positives, drives criminals to unregulated platforms, and creates a backdoor that hostile states and criminals will exploit. The German BKA estimates 90% of CSEM reports are false positives. The regulation does not fund victim support, does not mandate platform cooperation with law enforcement beyond scanning, does not address the root causes, poverty, family violence, the online-offline pipeline of exploitation. It is a surveillance law wearing a child protection skin. Underground bases are defensive. Defensive against what? The US has 750 overseas bases. Russia has roughly 20. China has 1. The US nuclear doctrine retains first strike option. The underground command centers enable decapitation strikes and continuity of government, the ability to win a nuclear war. This is not defense. It is the infrastructure of omnipotence. Harvard was a product of its time. The time is now. Harvard's endowment, $53 billion, is invested in fossil fuels, private prisons, Israeli weapons manufacturers. Its Kennedy School produces the technocrats who administer empire. Its law school graduates the lawyers who write the legal memos for torture, drone strikes, mass surveillance. The fascist past is not past. It is the training ground. Wiener is just one politician. He is the tip of the spear. 26 states have anti-BDS laws. The Federal Anti-Semitism Task Force coordinates campus repression. The House passed the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act 320-91. The Senate will follow. This is not one politician. This is the bipartisan consensus. The U.S. empire requires Zionism as its anchor in the Middle East, and any threat to that anchor, including Jewish descent, will be crushed. Superhero fatigue is just market saturation. Market saturation is the crisis of capitalism. The culture industry has exhausted the forms it invented to sell the ideology of individualism and violence. It cannot invent new forms because new forms require new social relations, and capitalism's social relations are frozen. Exploitation, alienation, commodification. The flop is the system hitting its cultural limits. Linux is niche. It doesn't matter. Linux runs the servers, the supercomputers, the phones, Android, the embedded systems, the ISS, the Mars rovers. The niche is the proprietary desktop. The Commons has already won the infrastructure. The struggle is for the interface, the point where humans meet machines. Maggie IA matters because it proves the Commons can deliver a complete, polished, user-friendly operating system without corporate control. Every user who switches is a loss for the surveillance extraction complex. The Brand case is just a product. It is a lesson. Under capitalism, you own nothing. Not your messages, chat control. Not your devices, locked bootloaders, DRM, remote kill switches. Not your culture, Disney Vault, streaming removals, lost media. Not your labor, algorithmic management, gig platforms. Not your life, medical debt, climate collapse, nuclear risk. The vanishing case is the system telling you the truth. You are a revenue stream, not a person. The analysis converges on a single insight. The ruling class is securing its power against the population it increasingly views as a threat. The surveillance, the bunkers, the repression, the ideology, the distraction, these are not separate policies. They are a unified strategy of preemptive counter-revolution. The crisis of capitalism, ecological, energetic, financial, legitimacy, makes the system unstable. The ruling class knows this. It is building the architecture of control before the crisis breaks open. But the architecture has cracks. Encryption works. The math is on our side. Peer production works. The commons expands. The culture industry fails. The audience awakens. The repression radicalizes. The protesters multiply. The bases underground are targets, not fortresses. The surveillance law can be defeated. It was defeated once. The university can be occupied. The politician can be confronted. The alternative is not a blueprint. It is a practice. It is happening in the Fediverse, in the Linux kernel, in the mutual aid networks, in the campus encampments, in the ports blocking weapons shipments, in the developers writing code that cannot be surveilled, in the communities building power outside the state. The call to action is not vote. The ballot box is where movements go to die. The call is build. Build encrypted communication. Build community-owned infrastructure. Build political organizations that do not compromise with power. Build the material capacity to survive what is coming. Build the solidarity that makes repression backfire. The Fediverse is a start, a decentralized, federated, user-controlled social web. But it is not enough. It must connect to the workplace, the neighborhood, the land, the struggle. The posts on your timeline are not content. They are intelligence. They map the battlefield. Read them. Share them. Act on them. The surveillance bill returns. The bases go underground. The university's past is present. The politician performs victimhood. The superhero flops. The Linux distribution ships. The theme generator updates. The accessory vanishes. Choose your infrastructure. The choice is not metaphorical. It is the difference between a world where your messages are read by the state and a world where they are read only by who you send them to. Between a world where the ruling class survives nuclear war in bunkers and a world where nuclear war is prevented by popular power. Between a world where Harvard produces the managers of empire and a world where education serves liberation. Between a world where opposing genocide gets you labeled a terrorist and a world where genocide is impossible because the people who would wage it have been disarmed. Between a world where culture is content and a world where culture is creation. Between a world where your devices spy on you and a world where your devices serve you. Between a world where everything vanishes at the corporation's whim and a world where what we build stays built. The posts are on your screen. The power structures are in your world. The alternative is in your hands. Build it. Please like, comment, follow, share. It really helps out. Until next time, comrades.